Welcome to the Success Agents Podcast, where we deliver weekly guests that bring insight to the elements of your business to become more profitable with your knowledge, skills, and tools that help you with more automation so you have less procrastination with your hosts, Chris Parsons and JP Fluellen.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Success Agent Podcast. I'm Chris, and I'm with my co-host JP Fluellen, and we have our special guest John Babin here, and thanks for joining. You can catch us live here on Facebook. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, LinkedIn, even YouTube. Go ahead and find us. We're everywhere. Last week, we had special guest Bill Boyles. Bill is the VP of Title Operations for the Title Financial Company. And we talked about the importance of finding a solid title company and how that will help you stay ahead of the game. And this week, we have Home Inspector John Babin. John, why don't you give us a quick little overview about yourself, your business, and all that good stuff?
Well, hi. Thanks for inviting me for your podcast. Like you said, my name is John Babin. I have a franchise called Pillar to Post. Pillar to Post is one of the, if not the largest home inspection franchise in North America. We have a big presence here in Colorado. I'm not sure how many franchises we have, about 50. And so I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm from Maine. I moved here about a year and a half ago. And I got into this business with my partner, Karen Fournier, who actually is also my girlfriend. And so she doesn't really get involved in the business part of it, but she's been very supportive, as far as the business goes. But ideally, home inspection is it's a very competitive business, but I think we do a very good job at what we do.
Very cool. And how long have you been in business for yourself?
About a year and a half.
Okay. And did you do home inspections before coming out to Colorado?
No, actually, I was an inspector, but I was an inspector for the paper industry. We physically inspected paper, and it sounds very simple, but it's more complicated than it sounds. There's a lot of elements to paper that people don't realize. But so I did that for about 8-9 years. And prior to that, I was a administrator for long-term care.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And what made you get into the real estate side of inspecting?
Well, I think when I decided to move out here, ideally the market, I wanted to see what the market was doing as far as the job market and what was hot, what was not. I've always been intrigued by real estate, and I kind of have an anal streak to me. So I thought, I love people, and I like to have the ability to look at things. And so it's the perfect match, really.
Gotcha. Cool. So as we know that this show is catered towards realtors, and we're going to kind of dive into some big aspects that you find important for us real estate agents to know. But just right off the top, what are some really important tips that you can provide to us realtors when trying to find a home inspector or when referring a home inspector to some of our clients?
Well, ideally, I think, inspection or inspectors should be a partner within the scope of the transaction. I mean, there's a lot of elements to buying a house, more than I ever thought of. And in some parts of the country, it's even more. We have, lawyers and et cetera. But I think the partnership between a realtor and a home inspector should be one of, should be ethically open, whereas I can't be hired or be referred by a realtor and say, well, make this work for us, because that would be kind of, so I have that would work for, that person for a while, and then we'd all go to jail. But ultimately, I think that the key is that when you hire a home inspector, they should be knowledgeable, yes, and they should know what they're talking about, but nobody's perfect. And but ideally, I think most realtors' biggest concern is the alarmist point of the whole thing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the home inspection can really make or break a deal. And so I always take an approach to be consultative with my clients. I tell them what's going on. I tell them things they want to know, maybe things they don't even want to know, or they don't even think they should know. But ultimately, it's about that partnership you have with that client, and it really solidifies a triad because, just because I leave the house, it doesn't mean I'm not open to other questions in the future. So that's pretty much developing that kind of relationship with my realtors.
Okay, so really an open relationship full of just transparency to provide, the answers that they need to know, maybe even the answers they don't want to know, but ultimately it's for their client, right? So knowing to a T what's going on in the house is really what you're providing.
Correct. And, of course, we follow, I'm governed by ASHI, which is American Society of Independent or Home Inspectors. And they govern us, so we have to follow their standards. Much like the real estate agency has their own test, and we have our own test. And we have to take credits just like everybody else. So it's good because the standards are they're pretty simple, but they're not. Ultimately, it's about being ethical with your clients at the end of the day.
So is that a license, or is it just certification, or do you get a piece of paper with that?
Yeah, it's a certification. Ideally, in certain states, there's license requirements. In Colorado, there's not, but you do have to be certified. And ASHI is one of them. InterNACHI is another one. There's a few of them out there, but we follow ASHI standards.
So you guys doing full inspections, partials, all of the above? Do you do pricing with that, or do you leave that up to the real estate agents, or have someone else come in and price the stuff out?
What do you mean pricing? As far as
so as far as the results of your inspections, do you guys provide a cost to cure?
No, not really. What we do is we offer, we just tell people basically go see an expert if there's an issue, for example, for your roof. I mean, ultimately, if I think your roof is on its last leg, I'd say go see a professional. And so I give that back to the consumer because they may have a brother-in-law or a specific company that they use, or my recommendation may not be their recommendation because they don't like somebody. So it puts me in a position of like, okay, this is open. I do have, I do refer some certain people to do certain things because if I had a good experience with them. But, for example, somebody may want to redo a wall or paint a room. I have a list of people I can send them to. If especially first-time home buyers, particularly they're people, and it's a very big investment. And they got to know what they're buying. That bottom line, So sometimes they don't know where to go to because they've just come into the area, or so I give them a few names, just like real estate agents give a few names for home inspectors. It's kind of an ethical thing. You have to kind of just do that.
So do you find more often that people are doing, I don't know, I'm not familiar a lot with pillar to post. So do you guys do a lot of full-blown home inspections, plumbing, electrical, whole house, or
Yeah.
do you guys do partials there, where someone would come in and they have their own plumber and electrician do the inspection, and then you guys do the rest of that stuff?
Basically we sell our services based on packages. So if you're a home buyer and you say, I just want a regular inspection, meaning that, what we do, basically, we look at about 1,600 different components of the house, and it's a lot. So, to shortcut that it's kind of like everything kind of connects together. The roof connects to the sheathing of the roof, and it connects to the trusses, and it connects to, so there's this symbiotic relationship with your house that the whole house has to work together. It's kind of like your body, right? So I think at the end of the day, what we do is we offer our clients packages of, you have an inspection, and then we do the other upgrade of that, and we use what they call IR technology, which is infrared technology. It kind of tells us the temperature variance in a certain component. For example, if I look at an electrical panel and I throw this camera on there, it's done in real time. It's almost like video, but It'll tell me an anomaly of temperature between, let's say, a breaker and its surrounding areas. What that tells me is that either the wire is wrong, is wired incorrectly. It's not, or there's something wrong with the wires. If it's above a certain temperature, then it becomes an issue, obviously for fire. And then there's a third tier of that, which I do all of that. Plus, some people are very concerned about allergens and mold, and so we have a lab that we use that can test all those components through the air or through a mold sample. So it gives people choices. It's really the bottom line is about pricing. It's also about concerns. So I always defer them to what we call a premium inspection, which is your home inspection plus the IR camera situation, and it tells the most as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a lot of inspections with radon?
I do. Radon is a big concern here in Colorado. It's without getting technical, basically and everybody blames everybody else. But ultimately, it's a natural phenomenon. It's a decaying of uranium in the ground, and it comes through fissures in the ground. And the problem with housing today is that it's really well built houses that have very tight envelopes. The problem is that the air that comes through the ground, or it radiates through the ground, it's called radon, will stay in your house. And if there's no way to mitigate that, then it'll be part of your breathing every day. So yeah, it's a big problem in Colorado for whatever reason. I'm not a geologist, but I can tell you that. And it's really weird to see, if I'll do a radon test, it takes a couple of days. And we do a radon test, and one house on one side of the street will have a high rate of radon, and next door neighbor will have none. It's kind of weird. But the big picture is we're digging in the ground. We don't know what kind of fissures are underneath the ground, 1,000 feet down. There's no way for me to know that, but so it is a big problem here in Colorado.
So how is that mitigated?
There's a couple of systems out there that, there's variations of these systems, but basically you either have an active or passive system. An active system basically has a pipe going underneath your foundation through your floor of your basement or crawl space. And there's a fan that actually sucks air from the ground. Or the passive system is the same kind of configuration, but there's no fan. That's the short answer.
Gotcha. And then, so I read something on Facebook about sewer scopes. Do you find a lot of people doing them, or when is that recommended? Like I know on the East, it's probably a lot different than out here in Colorado or up in Wyoming. A lot of it has to do based on the age of the home. When are sewer scopes generally recommended?
Well, it's kind of funny. The sewer scopes are recommended, in my opinion, especially houses older than 20, 30 years old, because of the fact that it's the kind of components they use to actually drain your sewage from the house. So if it's a clay type pipe, it'll probably be cracking at some point in time. Ground moves all the time. You can't help that. And it just takes a really small crack for a plant or to actually bore through your system, and it'll block your system really easily. But I've actually had people look at their house right after they built the house, and there have been problems there too, either in design. Yeah. So I recommend it if you're concerned about it, number one. And honestly, I think it's not a bad thing, because mitigation of these systems are not cheap. I mean, you have to dig into the ground, and you're responsible from your house to whatever hookup you have. It could be to the city or whatever, or it could be actually in your backyard. But at the end of the day, you're responsible from the road to your house. So, I've heard people spend $20,000, $30,000 in redoing there. So it's worth, a couple $100 just to look at your sewer, honestly.
Sure. Wow. Have you ever had anyone with sewer problems, JP?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I've had, the tough thing about any of these, vendors out there doing their thing is that they can recommend something and that may not be the fix, but they're only going to be responsible for up to the fix, So the thing is, like, the homeowner has to take responsibility for you do as many inspections as you need to feel comfortable buying the house, and if it costs you $1,000 to do repairs to save 10,000 later, then do it, but I've had other clients that, they just want to do the basics, because they're comfortable with whether it's the newness of the property or whatever it is. But I have had, sewer lines go bad. I had a guy call me one time and he's like, "Hey, he sold me this house like 2 years ago. And, my backyard looks like a sewage discharge area." And it was like literally like the septic had exploded in the backyard. Like, that's how bad it was. His grass looked really good though. So,
well fertilized.
So there's that. So, you got to look at the bright side of everything, right? But
Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
that actually happened to me when I was living in Maine. That the tank I had collapsed.
Oh, geez.
And you don't really see that till you see it,
Oh yeah, and it's gross, and the neighbors will let you know before you know. So, so like he was like, I think he was outside doing something. All of a sudden, he heard, and it was like the yard was bubbling up, and so he's like, I think I got a problem. So here's the crazy part. So he went and investigated what the issue was, and it turns out that what's the phone company?
AT&T.
CenturyLink.
CenturyLink
had drilled a hole through a septic line in his yard. Because they were, they have these machines that they just go in and it's almost like fracking, where they just stick it in and it bends and it shoots through as far as they need it to go, because it saves a lot of manpower. And he goes in there and he showed me a picture of it, dude. It was insane. There was a phone line drilled right through his sewer line in his backyard. Yeah. So he ends up calling the city, and they're like, "There's no way in hell that could have happened." Like, they're just like, "We use the latest technologies to geolocate all this stuff, And the guy sends him a picture, and he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, let us talk to," and of course, all of these companies have like the residential real estate department that they have to go through, and it took him like, I want to say it was almost 2 months before they were able to go out there, because he's like, "I'm not paying." Yeah.
Wow.
But luckily, he discovered that it was a rental property, and he was in between renters, so it just so happened to work out just fine. But
wow,
we ended up just sitting on it, and then, but he showed it to me, and I was like, "Dude, that is freaking nuts." But yeah, it was a perfect circle right through his phone line, shooting right through it. It's crazy.
Have you ever had anyone come back on you, John, for like you inspected their house and something went wrong, 6 months later or something? Has anyone come back on you for that?
Not really. I mean, I've had people ask me questions about, something that actually has progressed. For example, they wanted to see if the roof that they put on was kosher, so I've gone back and looked at it. But as far as any anomalies that I've made mistakes on, not yet. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been very fortunate that way.
Yeah. What systems of the house are you generally most concerned about? Is there anything that stands out to you initially, or is that kind of based on your initial assessment when you look at the property?
No, the biggest concern I have is roofs, actually, and it's a big problem here too. Maybe more than radon, as far as like urgency, because there's a lot of hail damage here. I've seen roofs being put on, and 2 months later they're shot, and then put on again, and they're shot again. It's just
wow.
the system, yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but ultimately your insurance company takes care of these things. But at the end of the day, that's your roof. Without a roof, everything else is going to get wet. Water flows downhill, and it's just that's the way it is. Second to that probably is your foundation. Again, it's holding up your house, but it's also, foundation does a couple of things. And it holds up your house, but it also holds back what's around the foundation. So cracks are kind of interesting to look at, and not all cracks are bad or alarming per se, but some of them are. Some of them actually, it's kind of obvious that they're going to eventually collapse. But
what makes a crack different? So when I had an open house, I heard a realtor talking about some cracks in foundations. And does it have to do with like the orientation? If it's a vertical crack versus a horizontal, the vertical is like settling versus a horizontal is pushing, or do I have that totally wrong?
It's the opposite usually.
Okay.
But you had a 50-50 chance, right?
Yeah, and I blew it.
Hey, statistically speaking, everyone is correct at some point.
Yeah. But no, actually, usually if it's horizontal, and especially if it's horizontal and there's a number of cracks, think about crashing your car against a wall. You know what I'm saying? What would be the first thing you'd see? It'd be a crack, probably in line with the outline of your car. So, you visually can see your car just crashing into a wall, and see what's on the other side of the wall. It's probably going to be an outline of your car cracking in the same way. So if you look at pressure from the outside, it probably would be at a horizontal level. There's a big problem, or they've discovered over the years here in Colorado, we have a mineral called bentonite. And bentonite is the mineral that is used for, it's the same components inside of like stuff like cat litter or stuff that picks up oil. It's a very, very porous material. But the problem with that is that as it expands, it has a very, very high pressure against, it's low. So, for every, I don't know what the ratio is, but, you can have up to 30 or 40,000 pounds of pressure pressing against your foundation wall in any given moment because this thing expands. If it gets wet, it expands. You can't avoid it. Anyway, so I know in the new builds now, they have a mix. That's why it takes a long time for them to, they have bunches of piles of stuff that they're mixing so that they make sure there's not enough bentonite in the soil to make a difference. But so, yeah, to answer your question, I'm sorry I went on a tangent, but usually you look at a crack in a horizontal way as an alarming kind of thing. It doesn't mean it's the worst thing in the world, because it depends how old the house is too. I mean, if you have a 50-year-old house and it has cracks, even if it's horizontal, it might not be the worst thing. It might be just because of time. Ultimately, I think the best thing to look for is, the history of the house. Ultimately.
Yeah, I've seen some of these old houses where they still have stacked stone, and they're like, dude, they look really messy, but they're like, yeah, that's best technology they ever had. Because when you're talking about, just a little bit of mortar and a bunch of stacked old stones versus a man-made component, they're like, that's, it looks ugly. You can't put sheetrock up against it, but they're like, he's like, dude, they knew how to build houses way back in the day, like solid houses,
I've seen houses that are about 120 years old that, it's amazing to me. I mean, they're crooked, but
right. They're still standing. They know how to do math back then. It's not that Common Core stuff that they're doing now. Or it's like, well, if we go ahead and put that up and it still looks a little fuzzy, oh well, everybody wins in the end, right?
At the end of the day, you're right. I mean, it's interesting to look at housing, the way they're built today versus the way they were built. I don't think it would be cost effective to build them like the way in the old days.
No,
I mean, not to put off what the track builders are doing. They're doing what they need to do to meet the demand.
But not everybody owned a house back in the day either. It was,
That's right.
so, it was usually the homeowner, and then they had a bunch of outbuildings, and then all the people that couldn't afford houses lived with the same person, and that's why you see like a lot of these, like up here in Wyoming, a lot of the houses that are single families now were part of a like compound of the homeowners, and then they had all the people that worked for them on the same piece of land, and so.
Or families would live together. Grandpa would be upstairs.
Yep, exactly.
That's it's almost changing now, isn't it? I mean, people are staying home with their parents longer, so I hear.
Yeah. If you're a millennial, you're gonna. What I've heard is the average millennial before they move out is like 35 before they decide to move out of the house.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's insane. Like, because they're just like, that's not on their priority list of things to do in life. It's like, oh, dude, I can make $1 million playing video games. So if I live in my mom's basement until I become rich, then I'm good to go, And so it's like, that's not a really a good path for success, So I'm just saying, like, not everybody's gonna, be on the league of Mortal Kombat on ESPN or whatever, or make it big on what is that? What is it? Twitch. Yeah. See, you would know. You're a millennial.
Yeah, but at least I moved out of my parents' basement.
You did. Good for you. When you were 33 and a half. So good job. You're not a statistic.
For the record, I just turned 26, so
okay.
I'm well ahead of the statistics.
There you go. Write that down. So if you're watching, give Chris some props for being an extra millennial. So.
But it's interesting you say that because I've seen that, people who are transitioning from, they're retiring, and I'll see, sometimes, a lot of times, buyers will walk with me, and it's not a rare occurrence at all. And a lot of inspectors don't like that because it just takes more time, right? You got to be talking to your potential buyers, and they have concerns, and I have a timeline, and I want to go, and whatever. But I enjoy talking to first time to buyers, period, because it's clear. They understand what that crack means. They understand whatever. And at the end of the day, it doesn't come back to the broker and say, did he mean this or did he mean that?
Sure.
So, but I've seen a lot of people moving out, and these are not the kids; these are the parents who are saying, "We're actually downsizing our house," and Junior, who's following them behind, kind of going, "Yeah, they're moving away,"
Yeah, because they've had enough. It's like, I'm moving out of this area because you won't move out, so I'm gonna move out.
This is my forced eviction.
It's right. I'm evicting my own self because there's no other way out. So
yeah, the in-laws suite is really for the in-laws. It's not.
Truth. It's not the. It's yes. It's for the in-laws, not the outlaws.
But there's some interesting designs here. I really like. I think builders are doing a good job as far as the design of things in terms of aesthetics. It's really interesting to see. Like, there's a period of time where houses have become the tract homes of the past are not what they were as far as aesthetically. It's not just a ranch garden level, and you have a basement and it's square, and now you have levels, and but it also makes it more complicated as far as to build and as far as to inspect as well, because a lot of things are covered, and it's not just a supporting wall. There's poles everywhere, and you don't know where they are, and you have to find them. So it's kind of a challenge, but it's actually very, very intriguing. So as far as the building envelope in and of itself has never changed in millennials. You still need the regular components. You still need a roof. You still need a foundation. You gotta have 4 walls. Windows and all that stuff came later, but ultimately, the materials they use today are some of them are experimental, but they're very good. They've been tested. It's like you're familiar with EFIS, this material that usually is used in more warmer climates, but it's basically a stucco that's on backing of foam. You see that a lot, especially in Arizona and stuff like that. Great material. It actually is good for the insulation of the house, but they've also had problems with it too if they're not done right. So you get a lot.
I've heard that if it's not done right, it'll make the house too airtight, and then it doesn't breathe.
Yeah, what happens too, really, what you're trying to avoid again is moisture and water. If you keep your house dry, you can have it forever, honestly. Unless it burns, like unfortunately what happened in France. But
the Hunchback of Notre Dame made it out, though. So for the record, write that down. He's surviving. So that's right.
Too soon, bro. Too soon.
Sorry.
We're still actively cindering.
No comments. I don't want to see any negative comments on this. Just kidding.
So in any case, the CFIS stuff is basically it's a great material, but if it cracks, that's what you have to be cognizant of. If it cracks even a little bit, it could be an issue because you won't see the moisture going behind it, and most of the time it's wood structure. So they've had houses torn apart after 3 or 4 years that are just blanketed with mold.
Wow.
Yeah, we have some houses up here. I don't know. It's probably between the 60s and 70s. They were making siding out of this like layered cardboard paper stuff.
Yep.
And the water would just whisk right up underneath it. If it wasn't sealed, it would wick right up underneath it, and it would just start, like when paper gets wet, it would just expand and look all gross, and then it would get moldy and stuff. I actually own a house that has some of that on it right now that I'm got to get resided.
So have you worked with 3D printed homes at all? I know they're kind of a new thing, but I was curious on what your take on that is.
I think it's cool. But I've never really inspected anything like that, not yet anyway. I think it will in the future because they seem to be cheaper.
Yeah.
Right, Tim? But yeah, I saw that on LinkedIn or something like that. And I thought that's a really cool concept. I don't know a builder doing it though, personally.
Yeah.
The problem with technology is that it takes so many iterations before it's cheap enough to make it work for the general consumer. They're just now starting to get, like Tesla is starting to now finally get into a price range where more people can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes quite a bit of, innovation and consumer testing to figure out exactly where it's going to go. Because Google goggles didn't take off very well, and that was pretty cool.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Any other technology that you see taking off besides 3D printing? Who knows if it's going to happen, but.
I haven't seen anything, there's just variations of the same thing, like using vinyl for windows, and it's just a different configuration, or using a hybrid of vinyl and wood. And, and again, the key is how it's installed, honestly. Because the manufacturers do what they have to do to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't want to come back to them. The perfect example of that is, you look at a electrical panel, and there's a outfit out there in New Jersey, actually, is called Federal Pacific, who has been responsible for thousands and thousands and thousands of fires.
I don't want to pay their insurance bill.
Yeah. So and I see them once in a while. It blows my mind. It's like, okay, what do I do with this? I'll just document what I see, and I would suggest you replace it. But some of them are actually working fine. You just never know. But they had this huge lawsuit, and unfortunately, in the 70s and 80s, that where they had the peak of the market, they were putting these things in there. Basically, what they were doing is the components are the same, but these breakers wouldn't break during a time of a lightning storm or something like that. And the thing about electrical fires is they don't stop burning until there's nothing to burn. You know what I mean? They keep on going until there's no contact. So that's why electrical fires are kind of dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more so than most anything else. But
so one of the things that comes up in inspections quite often is not the correct manufacturer breakers. At least up here it does. What's your take on that? So like there's certain panels, and panels have a manufacturer of a specific breaker that's, kind of like OEM versus generic. We get it written up a lot up here in inspections. Oh, these are not the right manufacturer breakers. What's your take on that?
They might be in line with the Federal Pacific, and not that are, well, those are risky, but I'm not really sure what they're saying. But I think what I look for is personally whether the breakers are in line with the box. That is, if it's a 100 amp box, why do you have 200 amps going in? And that,
right?
Well, it depends. Yeah, it's like you have over the years. I mean, we all try to save money. It's just what we do. So I think if I put I'm getting a hot tub now, and I got the jacuzzi shower, so that's going to take more power. But I don't want to spend another $15,000 and redoing my house as far as electrical. So I'm just going to pack it into the electrical box, and so I'll do it myself.
Right.
So, like I see that once in a while, and I mean, are you familiar with knob and tube wiring?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you must see it in your neck of the woods.
Oh yeah. Aluminum. We still got aluminum up here. Knob and tube.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just they don't have grounding issue, But yeah, and aluminum actually it's okay as long as, well, first of all, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to put in most, at least here, there's most of the lines coming in from the service is aluminum. And then from there, the issue is when it goes through the house. But if it's above 30 amps, you should be fine, because that's where corrosion doesn't happen as often. It's just, again, it's about money.
Sure.
I mean, it's a lot cheaper to manufacture aluminum wiring than it is copper. And, when you have something this thick, it's even cheaper. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So yeah, as far as your question goes, I haven't seen that actually, and maybe I'm ignorant, but most of the time I've seen the same configuration as far as manufacturers. And today's standards, they want GFI, they want AFI, which is arc fault interruption, which is GFI on steroids.
Wow.
Basically. And it's actually a good fix sometimes, if you have, a situation where you have a really old house and you need to have the protection. People will put arc fault interrupters in lieu of replacing the whole system.
Sure.
And it usually works. It's all about codes too, which I'm not privy on.
Yeah, I think Cheyenne is older than Fort Collins in terms of the age of the majority of the properties up here, because we have a huge chunk of Cheyenne that is still a lot of old property.
Yeah.
So we run into a lot of the crazy stuff like vermiculite. Do you run into that much?
No, but I do.
Yeah. So we've had these like issues of like, it's so back in the day, like they used to use this, it was almost like a gravel for insulation. Like it was just like this, they would, because like you'd run some of these old houses, you'd go up in the attic and it was like this gravel type stuff that they used for insulation instead of like the cottony type stuff that they use now. And I had never seen it in all of in the 10 years I've been doing this, I've only ran into it a couple, like I think just that one time. But it was crazy. And in some cases, from what I'm told, I'm not taking any stance on whether I know this or not factually, but that there was asbestos in it. Some had asbestos and some didn't. So then it was like, you run across this stuff and then it's like a deal killer because they're like, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars to test this stuff to see if it's, and so it goes back on the homeowner, so it's crazy.
Well, yeah, vermiculite is mined pretty close to asbestos. That's why there's something in it. They're both natural products. They're great, actually, because they're fire resistant. They can make anything with them. It's like, glue, right? You just, it's a It's a house. It's a shingle. It's a, you know.
Right.
And it only becomes really, really, really dangerous if it's what they call friable, which you see basically in construction because you're cutting things, right?
Sure.
But usually an alarming thing for me is when I'm looking around the house and the house is made in 1974 and it has popcorn ceilings. Usually that's asbestos. And I always recommend to test it because, you're probably going to remodel your home. As far as mitigation goes, that's what's costing so much money. But you understand why, right? I mean, it's the zero negative air that they have to use, and they have to
quarantine everything off, and then it has to be like the stuff that we get up here. We have to ship it to Denver.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because there's a disposal facility for that stuff specifically. So
I wonder what they do with it.
I don't know. That's right.
The world's most dangerous job, working in an asbestos landfill.
Yeah, where's Mike Rowe? What's that guy's name?
Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe. Where's he when you need him?
Yeah.
Head dive into an asbestos pool. How'd it go, Mike?
I don't know. I have cancer now. My brain doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I don't understand. Yeah, it's one of those. There's so much litigation on that people just don't take chances with it.
Yeah.
And it's a great material though, and you'd be surprised even in new homes. There's probably asbestos in it too. You just don't know about it. I mean, because understand that a lot of things are not manufactured in the United States, right? And it's still being mined. It's one of the biggest mines I think is in Canada, and I believe so. I don't remember, but they actually they ship stuff all over the world. So I mean, if you're going to get tile that's made in Taiwan, and it uses certain materials, and this is for the United States, and maybe there's an acceptable amount. I have no idea. But again, it's materials today actually are more dangerous as far as fire. The burn bill. Right. I mean, back in the day, they used the materials that are harmful to us if we eat them or breathe them. But now when they burn fast because they're natural materials or whatever.
Mm-hmm. It's like, what's the lesser of two evils? You either burn to death or die of cancer. So
yeah, I mean, your chances of survival are much less now than there were before. So one of the things I do, and realtors really, really hate this, but I always tell people to take their CO detectors and smoke detectors when they take over the house, just to replace them, whether they need to or not. I don't say whether they need to or not, but whether they work or not. Because particularly if they don't work, but no, it's just because it's that extra thing that you have to do for yourself. You start from fresh. Okay, 10 years with this bad, and the way I test it, all it tells me is that it's working, meaning that the battery's working.
Right.
And
you don't do the thing where you check to see how old they are?
Well, usually it's usually labeled, with somebody scribbling on it. I installed this October of 2014, and that I checked that.
Oh, I think we got a bad internet connection.
Oh no. Well, at least we made most of the show.
Yeah. We'll see if he comes back. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
For my own, I just say replace them.
Cool. Well, on that note.
Hey guys, I think we're going to finish this up. John, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, very simple. You just go on my website, pillartopost.com/John Babin. Or you can call me at 970-599-0283 or 0282. And or email me at babinteam@pillartopost.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Cool. And then you've serviced mostly northern Colorado. Do you service Wyoming as well, or is it mostly just northern Colorado?
Mostly just northern Colorado. I have a territory. It's from Fort Collins to Berthoud to Estes to really. But if you call me, I'll probably go anywhere. But for the most part, that's my territory. The cool thing about what I can do for you too is if we meet as a realtor, trying to find the easy button when things are stressful. I have an app that you can use that you can actually schedule home inspection just by pressing a button, on your phone, which is pretty quick.
Great. And what's that? Is that just a pillow to post app?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we lost its audio.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, pillar to post
Pillar
app
to post app.
on your device. Download that. Look for John Babin. You'll find it. You can figure it out. You have a phone. You have apps on it.
You're probably a millennial. Let's be real.
Yeah, if you're a millennial still living with your parents, you've got plenty of time to figure out the app. Just get a hold of them.
Cool.
Yeah, there's steps to it, but whatever.
JP, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can reach me at james.fluellen@gmail.com. You can call me at 307-772-1184. I'm doing free coaching calls right now, up to 30 minutes. And just to kind of dive into your business, figure out where your strong points are, where your weaknesses are, and see if we can come up with a quick game plan on how to fix that. And usually it's, one small little thing that you can do to fix your business will put thousands of dollars in your pocket. And you can just, if you can't remember any of that, JP Fluellen in Google, you'll find me everywhere. Thanks.
Perfect. Guys, if you want to get a hold of me, go ahead and reach out to chris.successagent@gmail.com, or you can just ping me directly on the Facebook page. I'm always looking for new guests, new interesting guests from all different fields of real estate. So if you have someone in mind or you yourself would like to join in, definitely give me a holler and we'll see if we can get you on our schedule. Until then, guys, thanks for joining, John.
Oh, make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you like what you're hearing. And because we do this for free, guys. We don't get paid. It's all content that's going to put money in your pocket, and we're doing this for free. So give us a 5-star review anywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor Radio, where else we got? Spotify.
Give us a like on YouTube.
Yeah, like us on YouTube. Share this if you think you find value in it, and peace.
All right. Thanks, John. Still lost them. All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya. Deuces.